Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. And one of the topics that I don't often talk about on the show is actually the podcasting industry itself. So when I happened to see Bryan on LinkedIn and his organization sounds profitable, I just thought I need to have him on the show because you do so much research about the industry. I could probably be in your website forever. Like it's just like so much information. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's today. It's very funny that you mentioned that today because Tom pulled up a stat. June will be 2 years since Tom Webster joined Sounds Profitable. He left Edison Research. He was there almost 20 years, easily the
Wow.
face of research, Signal, or the Infinite Dial, Super Listeners, all of those great reports. Um, we've done 10 reports in 2 years, and that's
Wow.
just what we put public. We've done
Yeah.
way more fielding than that, and we're planning to expand it even further because we believe that there are big questions that are being asked, and empowering everybody with the answers is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. Because it's changed so much,
Yeah.
even in the past 2 years. And I've been podcasting for, I don't know, at least six. And it's like it's hard to keep up. And with the advertising and then AI, you're like, oh my God.
I don't think we've had two stable years since before 2016, right? Because around 2016 is when the Interactive Advertising Bureau first introduced the podcast
Mm,
certification, right? 1.0. I think 2018 was when we went to 2.0. 2020, we had that little health scare, I guess. No,
yes.
we had a major pandemic and it was terrifying and awful. 2022 was the bust cycle of what happened during all of that, which we continued to grow. As in, if you remove the boom and the bust, the growth is still there
Yeah.
consistently. And then, and then we had at the beginning or the end of last year, beginning of this year, we had the correction with iOS 17 from the inflated numbers on Apple Podcasts starting 2 years ago at iOS 15. So yeah, I my entire time in podcasting, it's been since about 2016, we have not had 2 years that
No.
are stable enough to look back cyclically at. So it's very interesting.
It's so crazy to me. Like it is hard to keep up.
A little bit.
And there's so many elements. Like I feel like when like I was back in started my podcast forever ago, it was like just very basic. Like you did your audio, you got it out there. Like it just wasn't as savvy. And it's like you kind of had to do stuff yourself and like bootstrap it and figure it out. But now it's like there are like production companies and then
Yeah.
editors and then iTunes promoters. It's like the industry in regards to like the business of podcasting has changed. What is your overview on like what types of businesses have come out of that?
Oh man, it's so funny because a lot of what we do is for like mid to enterprise, and we're really trying to figure out how we do more for like entry level to mid, right? Even especially on the creative side. The business side is so convoluted that we want to make that visible because if we explain it better, then it's easy for someone who starts today to decide they want to work in podcasting. Whether that means their individual podcast makes enough for them to quit their job, that's a different story.
Yeah,
But it's a career field now. It's a medium that you
totally.
can get a job in. I think that we look and we tie so many metrics to advertising, which can be kind of frustrating and a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on a lot of the core people that we work with. But like, there's so many businesses that your business is built around podcasting in a certain subset there. I think I think the areas that I want to see less of is gurus. I think I just recently got active on Threads, and that's a generous way of like I'm reading it now,
Yeah.
and it's a nightmare because it's all these people with their bad opinions and trying to sell you something. But besides that, I think it's neat. I don't like editing, but I have a handful of friends who find it incredibly calming, right? They put on
Yeah.
something else. They put on like a lo-fi beats, or they get to just watch their kid run around in circles, and they're editing a podcast, and like that's fun for them, and that's a job. That's money on that side. I think growth in social media and marketing, like the organic aspects of that, are completely undefined. Like there's
Yes.
no, it's still like more art than science, and I think that that's an area that I'm excited to see grow and has a incredible value to grow. Um, But I think kind of figuring out like the area that I want to see more of is like, how do we remove the pressure? Like, I have a 2 and a 5 year old.
Right?
We record podcasts sometimes because it's just us. It's just for us. I send it to my mom. She gets a kick out of it. Like sometimes that can be enough, right? Like
Mhm.
National Novel Writing Month or whatever, right? Like sometimes you just do it for yourself, right? These things like I did. I like tabletop role playing games. To design a dungeon, one level every day or something like that, and I never did anything with it, but like it was mine, you know? And
Yeah.
so I think that the business, there's a lot of areas that we can expand on business. I think we're disproportionately creating things that sometimes it feels like it's preying on that new person there. And so,
Yes.
but I think we're starting to clean that out because I think that the community talks and everybody is really willing to help each other more than they are necessarily to charge each other. I think it's very visible who the bad actors are there. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's so many interesting areas. There's people that will create video components for your audio only podcast so it does better on YouTube. There are people that will help you A/B test cover art and episode art or things like that. There are people that want to turn your podcast into part of a live festival or help you build a community around it. Like it's neat. And at South by Southwest, we had a whole day there to prove why podcasting, why South by had to do more. And Gabe Tartaglia of SXM or SiriusXM got up on stage and said, "Audio and podcasting is a kernel of what's to come." And that's amazing
Mm.
from an audio first company to say that. Like
Yeah.
the best part about this is if we let anybody who wants to call whatever they do a podcast, whether it is 30 minutes of audio sent over iMessage to a group chat,
Hmm.
to a podcast or to a YouTube feed with no RSS feed, we all benefit because it's what's going to stick. What can we unify better than anybody else, better than influencers, better than YouTubers, better than all these things? We have a really strong community. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of areas for growth, and I'm excited to see what's next.
I know. Again, you just gave me some like examples of different like offshoots within the business and the industry, and it's like, what? Like that's a thing? It's crazy to me. It's not just editors, it's not just companies that are helping you launch. It's like there's so many different nuances. And of course, now that YouTube is in the game, it's like that's opened up. And now that people are using video more, that's opened up so many different jobs that are out there
Yeah.
or avenues for improvement. But for me, I don't know about you, Bryan, but it's like because it has changed like with video and YouTube and AI, it almost feels like if someone is new, they're like, oh my God, I have to optimize every kernel of my podcast in order to make it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like what do you say to people that have those thoughts go through their head?
I struggle with how to help them because if you look through my Kickstarter history of all the board games that I will buy and never play, I buy the biggest edition with all the expansions for a game that's never come out because I might like it and I don't want to miss out and I have to have all of it.
Hmm.
And so that's the hard part, right? Like, I think it's really interesting. Is this is going to be in full format on YouTube, audio and video?
Hmm.
And was it always that case?
Yes.
And did you and so you've since you've started the show, you've always recorded video as well.
Yes.
So in that scenario, you got ahead of the hype on that end. But like
Woo!
our podcast is only audio, and we thought about it. It's like, well, what will we do for video? And it's one person talking about something. Tom, when he narrates the daily newsletter, sometimes he's like in the closet because his wife's on a phone call, and the
Yeah.
easiest place to take the no mono and record is kind of there. And so what do? We have him with his iPhone, like pointing at himself. So it can be a lot. But like if this podcast was just audio and you expanded it to video, there should be no expectation that you double your audience.
Hmm.
Right? Like there are people who watch video podcasts, there are people who listen to audio podcasts, and there are people who do both. And most video podcast people also listen to audio podcasts. Um, but it's different things, right?
Yeah,
Even what we're doing right now, where it's two talking heads on a Zoom call, is slightly less valuable than if we were in the same room.
I know.
And that's why it's so interesting there. But I think really understanding your goals. I mean, like
Yeah.
like one of the things we talked about in the prep for this was like advertising. So I want to skip ahead for that for a second because like when you think about making money off of a podcast, podcasts are paid the CPM model, cost per milli, and it's really about 1,000, right? Is here's like absolute insane best case scenario. You have four ads, six ads at $25 CPM each, which is just not happening unless you're selling them all host read or you have a really popular show or all that. And most people aren't selling out, even on the higher end. So let's say in that scenario, that's six ads, $150 per thousand total downloads. So all six ads are filled for every thousand downloads. Let's say your show gets 1,000 downloads an episode, right? That is $600, right? That's $600 you got to deal with six individual companies and sell out all those, or more than six. What happens if those
Yeah,
six changed every episode and now you're at 24 people you dealt with?
that's a lot of work.
$600 is probably not worth your time for that
I
communication. So
know.
these are the things that we need to take into account, and we need to figure out what success is
Yeah.
for that person. I think that if your podcast isn't going to be like mainstream appeal and you're going to throw a lot of money into it to grow it and get attention and try and get it to the top of the charts overall, then you really need to think what it is, right? Is the video valuable to have because you use it for asset creation? Is the audio valuable because
Mm,
that's where you believe people will consume it, right? So understanding your category is important. Are you doing a true crime podcast? And video is going to be hard there anyway, right? So
true.
I think I'd rather see people start if it's about a hobby or passion or excitement on whatever works for them and let it grow. But if it's a business decision, it's really what does this need to do? What
Yeah.
is it? Is it replacing social media posts and blogs and newsletters and all of that? Then yeah, probably audio and video makes sense because you have more assets to work with. If it is a labor of love and you want to see what happens and you're excited by it and you're passionate about it, um, whatever. I mean, it can be, we can do it on an iPhone. We can do it with
Yeah.
no headphones, no microphone. You can do it live and call it a podcast and not record anything if you want to get cheeky about it.
I know. And like there's so many options. I almost feel like there's so much pressure because I almost think because the industry has grown, there's more pressure to be like bigger and better. And you feel like, oh, I'm not successful because I don't have sponsors, or I'm not successful because I'm not raking in thousands of dollars like Entrepreneur on Fire, or I don't have like, Joe Rogan as a guest, or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. It's almost like you're always comparing to those top tiers and you're seeing what's possible. So sometimes you feel like you're at the bottom of the totem pole. But like you said, if you figure out like why are you doing this in the first place,
Yeah.
if it's to create content or if it's to make connections for partnerships, like who cares what you rank? Who cares if you have a sponsor? It,
Yeah.
it doesn't even mean anything.
Um, uh, I used to be a very chubby kid, and I put a lot of effort getting fit, and then I became a dad, and that all went away. And so, but like let's put it in another world. I'm not successful at getting in shape because I don't have Lee Pierce's arms or whatever, like a right, like or pace, Lee Pace. I'm not like you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I'm not buff like Joe Rogan. I'm not like change it from podcasting, right? Like I think I'm not successful because I wasn't in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like podcasting used to be like a blog, right? Like it used to be like
Yeah.
YouTube, but like nobody starts a YouTube channel and is just like kicking a can because they're like, I put up 3 videos and I'm not Linus Tech Tips, right? Like I think that the we're still in the delusion that like anybody can just get in front of a microphone and that become their job.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more like starting a business right now. So if a friend said to me like, I want to start a clothing shop, a physical retail clothing shop, and I'm like, how much money do you have saved? And they're like, well, nothing. I figure I'll sell as I go, and then I'll use it to build the business, and then I'll quit my day job. And I'd be like, uh,
Um,
it doesn't work that way. I think we need to get past that on the podcast side because I think having a passion about podcasting, um, get a job in podcasting. Evo Terra, when he was inducted to the Podcast Hall of Fame, said the easiest way to make a living as a podcaster is to get a job in podcasting today. And that's true. And that's super cool, right? It doesn't mean you have to stop your passion project on there,
mhm.
or, Gavin from our team still does podcast critic work. Sounds Profitable doesn't touch that stuff directly, but Gavin still enjoys it and still
Yeah.
does it directly. I I don't know. I think that we have to separate that mindset of it. Either it is a job, it is a business, or it is a passion. And there are times when it can be all of them. But let me tell you, if I could get paid for my passions, we'd be playing Dungeons and Dragons right now.
That's awesome for sure. And you also have to like, I mean, I know like when everyone was doing live videos on Facebook, and I'm like, I know I should, but I just can't. Like, it just freaked me out. So I'm like, you have to know yourself as well, what you're
Mhm.
comfortable with. I think that's a huge part. So with the industry that has grown and all the different businesses that are out there and all the different facets, um, like there's so many like iTunes promoters coming out of LinkedIn. You get approached by a lot, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of companies out there. What advice would you give someone that is looking for help within their for their podcast?
Oh man, I think this is going to be my hot take. This will be the clip that you use across LinkedIn.
Okay,
Um,
sweet.
I think that if your company, your podcast isn't making more than $100,000 a year and you are getting inbound services and pitches, that it's probably not the service or pitch you want to work with. I think that's the truth
Mm,
of it. I mean, like, let's talk about you and your setup, right? Like, you're putting out information, you're educating people that you want, you're talking about what you do overall and the area that you're in, and you're making it easier for people to contact you. You're not cold DMing people or adding them on LinkedIn and saying, like, I'd like to do this for you. You're connecting with them for the relationship and showing that you do this and interacting with them and letting them know that it's available. It's not, hey, for $1,000, I can do this for you. And so that's the truth of it. I think that
mm,
unless you are making full-time money on your podcast is that notable, then I would be very skeptical about any inbound
yeah,
because assume that you are one of 10,000 emails sent that day or requests or inquiries there. Assume that to service you at the dollar amount that makes sense, that it is so templated that it's probably not in your best interest to do that, and evaluate what it's really taking off your plate and helping you with. I
mhm,
think I think that the areas that for like first creation, like hosting platforms is a really difficult thing. There are so many layers of them, but I am always amazed by the effort that teams like Libsyn and Transistor, Captivate, Red Circle, Spreaker, all of these guys put into teaching you as a podcaster, regardless of if you're using their platform or not.
totally.
And to me, like, then I see that and I see, like, well, how do I show my support? What they said helped. Well, I can host with them. Oh, awesome. The thing that they talked about that's really critical, they actually built a feature for it. I will use that feature, right? They recommended these things here. Like, that's endorsement, right? That's
Mhm.
advertising. That's helping grow that base there. So I think that I think that inbound's really tough under a certain size. I think that finding people you believe in, just like when you're having a kid, pick the gurus, and I hate that word, but pick the gurus you want to follow. People
Yeah.
pick the people whose path sounds attractive and replicable, and buy into them until it doesn't work, and then find another one, right? But don't let someone come tell you they should be your coach. Go
Mm,
ask someone to coach you. Go ask someone to work with you. I think that
right.
that's going to get you better results every time,
That is great advice. Absolutely. Because it can feel overwhelming when you're being approached by,
constantly.
every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's out there. So tell me a little bit more about Sounds Profitable. Explain how it is a resource for podcasters and why you have it in the first place.
Well, it started because I got fired. I always like to, it's always
Hey,
important to highlight these things. I mean, I'm a college dropout. I tried to be a history teacher and I failed and I got into advertising and ad tech. And after 8 years in general, like mobile advertising and all that, and struggling, I would voice opinions and things that needed to be fixed that people didn't want to hear.
right.
And wasn't incredibly tactful about it. So I lost my job a bunch. But I got into the podcast space with an attribution company. It was Barometric at the time. We were acquired by Claritas. I was there for a bit. I went to work at Megaphone. I was brought in to rewrite the ad server. They were trying to sell to Spotify. Very difficult
Mm,
to sell a house while someone's ripping up a carpet, and they couldn't really tell me, and I'm very bad at taking hints. So I just started writing. Thanks to James Cridlin at Pod News, like we were able to start the newsletter, and it really did come across as like an ad tech newsletter to start. But here we are. September will be 4 years for us. Tom
Wow.
Webster, I gave him half the company to come over because I knew that his vision on what podcasting could be was where I wanted to bring the company and where I thought we could impact the industry. And so now we're a trade association. You know, where
Mm,
every piece of content we put out is free and ad free. We do have sponsors on certain things, and I really differentiate that because there's no sell. There's no like click here to buy this or anything
right.
like that. It's like here's information, here's data, here's why it's valuable. Here's their logos because they wanted to be part of this. Nobody has editorial control or anything there, but it's 6 newsletters a week. It's, you know, a Monday
That's a
through
lot.
Thursday. It is a lot. Monday through Thursday daily on the business of podcasting. The Friday recap takes the most important points of those days
Yeah.
and reconciles it. So if you don't have time to read every afternoon, Wednesday's our thought leadership piece. I'm very proud of the fact that today I got to put live an interview that I had with the cast of This Is Us for their That Was Us podcast that's coming out.
Ooh,
Yeah, so I got to interview some really cool
that's
people.
amazing.
Yeah, definitely a cool kid moment on that, and I had to block my screen so I didn't just giggle the entire time staring at celebrities who I incredibly admire. But all of our research is free as of right now. We might have to change it in the future,
Mhm.
but we don't even require you to put your name, email,
Oh,
anything
wow.
like that. We don't even give you the option to do it there. This is probably what we'll revisit. We'll have a skip button, but none of it is forced lead capture because at the end of the day, we are a resource that we want to help educate anybody who wants to hear it about how podcasting works, where it can go, why it's important. Um, our newsletter hits about 9,000 people, is 45% unique open rate, and
Nice.
it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, empowering all those people to tell the next group of people, right?
Yeah.
To help them understand what's important to say why podcasting, or why this is a wrong way to dismiss podcasting, or here's some misconceptions, or here's where we can bring the industry together and do more together. It's been great. And we do
Yeah.
tons of live event stuff. We try and be at all the podcast events. We punched our way into South by Southwest, which is a huge hit, and hopefully they're going to do an official track next year. Um, it's very fun.
Yeah.
And it's a
Good.
lot of partners get consulting with me directly, and time with Tom,
Mm,
and an active Slack channel, and we really bust our butt to make this industry better. And I don't
yeah.
take it for granted at all. I really think I have the best job in podcasting.
Love it. I'm so glad you're happy. Yeah. And the amount of information is astounding. Are there any certain areas that you focus on for your research?
Um, so here's the hard part. Like research about general consumers of podcasts or people who are podcasters don't change drastically. Like there's some stuff that like we're going to be doing the yearly report, the podcast landscape, which we're going to have some really incredible news coming out soon about our Q3 report. This will be the second time we've done it, and we're going to expand it. um I would say it is a Herculean leap in difference. Like I already think we nailed it last year. I think that we're just throwing everything in that we want it to be so that we get there as quick as possible, and it can be something that everybody measures their own reporting against in the future
Mm,
to help make their reporting better. Um, I think it's tough. Research almost always has to focus on how to bring revenue into a space. And
true.
podcasting's best way to bring revenue into the space where the most people are working and the easiest access point that we haven't fully mastered yet is advertising,
Yeah.
right? Compared the ad spend versus the amount of time listening is not even yet. Might
Mm,
never be even, but it can be better. And so a lot of our research will end up talking about advertising in some form or another.
yeah.
Like the ad bargain was our Q1, but like it talks about how people who listen to podcasts are wildly more receptive to ads, and
Absolutely.
find it as a like supporting their creator. And what is that like, thinking about that, what does that mean? Like even if you don't have a podcast RSS feed podcast, but you put it on YouTube and you call it a podcast, does that favorability come over? We think so on a lot of these things, and we're digging in there. But um, always open to be challenged on different things. But quarterly or once a year, we'll be doing like the listeners, right? And that will be the Q3. The rest of our research, those up to 10 sponsors that we work with, help us decide what is going to be the most impactful to their business in the industry.
Mm,
each quarter. And I think we're doing a little bit on frequency of ad repetition and content. That will be Q2, and we'll be premiering that sometime in late May, early June. And then we have Q3, like I said, the podcast landscape, and Q4 hasn't been decided yet. And
yeah.
this year has been relatively calm. And I like not
Mm,
having Q4 yet because it means that if that doesn't stay, what could we quickly action on to solve people's problems?
yeah, absolutely. So why do you think it's calmed down a little bit?
Um, it's tough. I think part of its coverage has dried up a little bit, which isn't great. Like mainstream coverage is continuing to stop. Like Inside.com stopped their podcast newsletter.
Oh,
Hot Pod just closed theirs out there, and we'll see if it comes back. Ashley Carmen at Bloomberg is now covering podcasts and music, and she does a great job. But like it's and music.
right.
Alyssa at Marketing Brew covers sports and podcasts, or I think sports and audio. And so part of it is there's a little less coverage, so there's a
Yeah.
little less concern there. Part of it is um, comfort in what podcasting is, and instead of consistently demanding that it become something it can't. Right, like we can't get a lot of listener side metrics because until
Mm,
Apple or Spotify graciously pass us more data, it's not going to happen. Um, but it's just the consistency. We weathered it. We've made
yeah.
it through it. It continues to work. But I'm borderline ready to have a sign that says like time since last SNL skit because it feels like we're done making fun of podcasting. Like probably not
Yeah,
done,
right.
but we did research that we asked like, how do you view like what do you view about being a podcaster? Like what is your interest in being a podcaster? And like 20% of the U.S. population define it as something I'd like to do. That's
Hmm,
pretty cool, right? It wasn't until like the very bottom percentage that people were just like making fun of it. But there's a lot
totally.
of people that like it's a thing. It's here. It's stuck.
Yeah.
People couldn't push it out. People couldn't dismiss it. And, no matter what you think about certain celebrities and whatnot, those people are engaged with it. They love it. They find it as a different way to connect, and the audiences
Yeah,
come. So
they do.
we're we're in a really good spot. And I think it's mostly the expectation that things aren't going to double, triple, quadruple anymore, and that double digit growth year over year is an absolute home run.
Hmm. Agreed. I almost feel like it's the new like having a book. Like before it was like you had
Yeah,
to have a book. I mean, you still should have a book and yes, I should, but it's like, oh, she has a podcast or do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
before it was just the book. And now it's like, oh, they've got a podcast, they've got a show. Like it's that instant kind of credibility.
100%.
And I'm wondering if the mainstream is not on it as much is because it is so recognized that it's not like hot news anymore. It's, become more mainstream. So it's kind of like not in the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay. I mean, look,
Yeah, totally.
it's we don't have to be the top piece of news, but as long as all our coverage isn't all just like Joe Rogan's deal and Huberman's controversy, if like they're talking about the good stuff in it, that's really what I'm
Yeah.
pushing for. I'm making sure that those journalists have access to the information of
Yeah.
like what is interesting and what's going on, who's collaborating, how is it that all these podcasts are having sold out live events, right?
Yes.
You know?
I know. I don't like, and especially women, I find like there's like Cat and Nat and these people that used to do like a little Instagram thing and women that were just, complaining about their lives, but in a funny way that was entertaining. And then they have a podcast and now they
Oh
have
yeah.
live shows. And I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, Big Little Feelings was like an Instagram account that we followed through the pandemic because we had two young kids, like, and to like understand how to interact with them. And I believe they have a podcast with Odyssey now. And like, I don't need their stuff anymore, but like, I listened a little bit, like, I
Yeah,
support it. My wife will check it out every now and then. Like, it's awesome. That's
I
and
know.
community
It's
and
so
feeling that
cool.
comfort. Like, here's the truth: I got two kids. I work a lot. I work too much, probably. It's so easy. Like, I'm with the kids in the morning, then I work. I sometimes get to work out, and then I spend more time with my wife and the kids, and then they go to bed. And sometimes she'll be like, "I'm going to go to yoga," and so in that moment I get to be like, "Well, do I play one of the billion board games I have that I can't play solo? Do I play video games online with friends? Do I just watch TV?" And sometimes I'm like, "I'll just work." And
Yeah.
so when I have time to listen to a podcast, it's reminding me like I listen to a lot of actual play podcasts. I listen to things that make me feel there. like
Yeah.
part of something, like
Yeah.
the part of my life that I just don't have as much time for right now. And that community, like I'll Dungeons and Daddies is and
That's
their
awesome.
subline is not a BDSM podcast, but they do live shows, and I'm so excited. And they're West Coast based, and we're moving to Portland this summer, and I cannot wait. Can't wait to be able to go to some of their live shows, like
That's so
to
cool.
feel that community aspect there. And so
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something incredibly powerful here. And the last thing I want to remind people of, like, I have spent thousands of dollars to fly to conferences to get on stage to speak to 15 people. So
Wow.
if you can put out a podcast and you
Mm-hmm.
can speak to 15 people and it costs you less than thousands of dollars to
Yep.
accomplish, don't underestimate it. It might not be enough for you to quit your job, but like, you're somebody's habit.
Yeah.
There's if you enjoy
I
it, it's
know.
awesome. But that we need to reassess the gap between I've started a podcast, I'm I have a mansion. Like, I think we need to
Yes.
redraw that path for a lot of people, but sometimes just do it for fun.
Yeah. Agreed. And enjoy it.
Yeah.
Before we go, I just do want to ask you one quick question. What is, I just happen to see it on your site, brands in audio? It looks like a
Yeah.
directory.
Yeah, Brands and Audio, we worked with the team at Lower Street, and we happen to work with, I think, over 20 branded podcast studios at this point. And
Oh,
so
wow.
Brands and Audios was the attempt, and we're still working on it. It's very tough for us to all focus on it, to create a directory that anybody can submit branded podcasts that they work on. And so
Mm,
it's open for everything. So like there's recently like an audio fiction directory that just opened up, but the intention here is that if you're a brand and you want to see other brands podcasts, if you're a production company and you want to see other brands or production company podcasts,
mm,
you generally want to know, like, what is and isn't a branded podcast, what are examples. Like, this is a
yeah.
great place for it, and we're trying to really highlight them.
Awesome.
And it's open to submit. There's no costs associated at all. We define a brand by a company.
Yes.
We're trying to get away from like the idea of a brand as a personality, but it's usually a commissioned or internally made podcast with the intention
Yeah.
of not necessarily like being like buy more houses, like, or whatever it is, but like, this podcast brought to you by Rocket Money, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the mindset there. But yeah, it's a fun project, and we come up with ideas like this all the time, and we try and just get them live and see what sticks.
I love that because I find like people talk about branded podcasts, but there's no, I don't know what the right term is. There is no directory just for that, or there is no platform just for branded podcasts. Like it's people kind of like know it's there, but there's no like no spot to land it, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, because it's no category in Apple to identify it.
Yeah,
So that's the
absolutely.
goal. We want to provide more identification. We want to help as best we can to make it easy for people to get visibility.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I will be submitting my RSS feed
Heck
and
yeah.
adding it to my Rolodex that I have on my site as a directory, and obviously sounds profitable as a resource because I think it's awesome. So, how can people find sounds profitable, and what can they expect to see?
Yeah, soundsprofitable.com, and then subscribing to the newsletter. Um, I'd love for you to subscribe to both, but if you subscribe to the main one, which is Wednesday and Friday, you're going to get all the information that you need. We'll update you about the live events we're at, the research that's coming out. You won't miss a thing on that way. The daily is, do you need more information about what's going on in the business of podcasting in and
Mhm.
around the space?
Right.
And that's how we help there. We have I want to say that if you hit reply, it actually goes to me, and I do respond to all
Oh,
of the
nice.
emails. The best part about owning your own company is being able to determine like that you want to talk to
Yeah,
everybody. And I think it's really important to highlight that we have a job board and a press release board that is
I saw
completely free.
that.
To the point where I actually have been paying people to help submit. Like, we know where jobs are listed, we know where press releases are listed, and I'm having them pull them in, because no matter how much I tell my partners in the general public to submit there, sometimes it just doesn't hit their flow.
No.
So why let people miss out? And we've helped people
Yeah.
get jobs and all of that. And yeah, I mean, everything is free, right? We have very little that's held back just for partners. And the big thing that I would emphasize is that we price partnership and the relationship there based on smaller companies, and we
Hmm.
make it accessible and valuable. And we'd love for people to consider it, but it is not in any way an obligation to get any value of working with us.
Yeah.
You'd get 99% of it from just subscribing. to the newsletter. And then that last 1% is like, how do we help you directly put any of this in action, solve your problems, or help other people solve their problems by connecting you with them?
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for all the hard work you do.
Thank you for having me on
Um,
the show and your hard work too. Making a
Aw,
podcast
thank
isn't
you.
easy.
I know. I feel like the people in the podcasting industry are just so giving and want to help other podcasters. And I think podcasting in general is just helping us all connect in a
Mhm.
better way.
I mean, it's the truth of it. Like, look, when you reached out for all this, I didn't ask you any stats or anything like that. You were incredibly well informed about what we do. You were passionate about what you do. You gave me a good reason for why we should connect. That's enough. I
Yeah.
have like, do I have 175 partners that I take a half an hour with every single month? Absolutely. Do I have time to talk to new people and help them and like share with them, like share what I can with them and learn from them? Always, always. Like I
Mhm.
think the biggest mistake in podcasting is determining you don't have time to interact with someone.
Yeah, I agree. Great attitude. I appreciate meeting you and having a great conversation. And thank you for continuing to help the podcasting industry understand what's going on a little bit better and help them in their podcasting journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today. And we will see you next week on the Leverage Your Podcast Show.